you have been feeling stagnant in your life and business and you're like, I just want to do something bigger, but I don't know where to start. I know I need to transition into a new season. This episode is going to be perfect for you because we are going to talk about how to 10x your life and business so you can elevate into your next season. Tune in. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Work Hard, Live Soft podcast, where we talk about how to build a successful business so you have the freedom to live a life you love. I'm really looking forward to today's episode because I think it's going to provide a level of clarity for people who are wanting to transition seasons. Right now, if you're feeling stuck, like you should be doing more, I feel you 100%. I've dealt with this quite a few times in my business. And personally, if I'm being honest, I feel like that right now in my life and business, like I just want to do more. I know I'm called for more, and I feel like I need to grow and expand beyond the season that I'm in. Not only am I looking to transition to something new, but I'm looking to elevate higher into something bigger, better, and more aligned with what God is calling me to do. And so I'm going to talk about some of the things that I pay attention to before I make my transition. And I'll even share some of my own personal experiences of making big shifts in my business and how I knew it was time. Actually, recently, I just started reading this book called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. And it's been so in alignment with what I've been thinking. It's been so in alignment with some of the things I've already done. And it's really just been stretching my mind into what I want to do. Basically, the premise of the book so far, talking about 10X being easier than 2X, is that when you set a goal for 2X, there's a million ways to double your existing results. But when you want to 10X your life, when you want to 10X your results, when you want to 10X your expectations, there's maybe only 1 to 2 ways that you can actually do that because the goal is so big. And a huge part of that is not just looking at your actions of what you can do or looking at different strategies. It's really about shifting who you are. You have to completely change your identity in order to be able to completely shift your life. And an example that I was giving up here is if you wanted to, let's say, double the money that was in your savings account, you would just need to maybe save a little bit more of what you're already making, reduce some of your expenses, maybe go do a little side gig for a temporary time. But when you want to 10X the money that's in your savings account, you're going to ask for more money. You might even do a complete career change. You're going to do something that is far more drastic than some of the tiny tweaks that you would make when you want to double the money that is in your savings account. Another example that I thought about is if I were to 10X my goals of what I want for my parents. So one of the things that I love that I'm able to do now is I'm able to take my parents on an international vacation, one every single year. And I thought to myself, what would have to be different? And what would have to be different about me and my business and the things that I was doing and how I was thinking and how I was living if I wanted to take them on 10 international vacations per year? My thought process and how I thought about the strategy would be completely different if I just wanted to add an extra vacation. But to think about how can I take them on 10 vacations per year, that requires me to be bigger, to think smarter, and to ultimately work differently. So lately I've been feeling like I'm so grateful for where I am right now, but I really just feel like I'm called for more. And the first time that I had this feeling was right before I dropped out of college. This was back in 2013. I was 23 years old, and I already knew that it was time for me to transition because, one, I was bored with school. I wasn't performing well in school, and I just knew that there was something more. And I didn't have the spiritual maturity back then to really know that my intuition or that the Holy Spirit was calling me to something bigger, but I could just feel it in my gut that this isn't what I desired. But once I made that transition, I completely shifted who I was. I went from somebody who was designing on the side to now becoming a full-time freelancer and being able to help people with their online branding, help people with their websites and how they were seen online. And I really just remember feeling just a level of agitation and anxiety when I was stuck in that season too long. And so if you're ever wondering, like, how do I know if I'm supposed to be in this season and I just need to stay committed and stay disciplined versus I'm called to a higher level, I'm called to do more, to be more, and to have more. For me, when I start feeling a level of anxiety and I start feeling a level of discomfort of where I am in terms of I no longer feel like I'm showing up in the way that God is calling me to show up, that's how I personally know that I need to elevate into a new season. So if you've been feeling like that, this episode is going to be perfect for you because now you can start to see where do I need to go next and what are some of the things that I need to do. The second time that I felt that feeling was after dropping out of college and becoming a full-time freelancer and building my design agency. I needed to make that transition from full-time designer to becoming a coach full-time. And this was really scary because every single time that you shift into a new season, you're going to make other people uncomfortable. And what's really important is that you have to realize that people want you to stay in a place in your life that is most comfortable for them. Most people are not going to give you advice based on what is best for you. They're going to give you advice based on what's best for them. And so you will have people, even who mean well and they care about you, who are going to question, well, why do you want to do this? Why is this important? One of the concepts in 10X is easier than 2X in chapter 2 is talking about how you have to live in this energy of want. And what happens is oftentimes we navigate from a place of a scarcity mindset where we feel like we should only be doing things that we need. But when you're operating in an abundant mindset, you do things that you want. I want to make more money. I want to have better relationships. I want a bigger business. I want more vacations. I don't need those things. They're not necessities. They're not requirements for me to live. I simply just want them. And what's really important to understand is that you don't need to justify your wants or your desires to anybody. If you feel it in your gut and you desire it and you want it, then go after it. But so many times, because we're so programmed to only have the basic necessities, we feel like we have to justify our desires before we can actually go after it. So my challenge to you is to really consider, what do you want in life? What are your biggest dreams? What are your biggest goals? What are your biggest desires? What do you want beyond your basic necessities? Write that down, have that vision, and go after that with no explanation or no validation needed. This really started to click for me when I went from simply just needing to make a certain amount of money to survive to wanting to make a certain amount of money to see what was really possible for me. And so really having this mindset of, I want to do this, I don't need to do this, stretched my level of thinking. It stretched my goals. It stretched how I showed up, and it stretched how everybody else around me showed up. Because if you wanted to work for me, or if you wanted to be a peer of mine, you also needed to think bigger. And that's the beauty of elevating who you are. That's the beauty of setting a higher standard for yourself, because naturally the people who want those things too, they will rise to the occasion, and the people who are not willing to stretch, not willing to grow, they will fall off. So I would say the third biggest shift that I had in my life was when I went from going from solopreneur to CEO. And this was such a huge shift for me when I went from me and maybe like 1 to 2 contractors to saying, okay, I'm not going to do one-on-one anymore. I'm going to do group. I'm going to do bigger events. And I saw myself completely differently. How I saw myself as a solopreneur versus how I saw myself as a CEO, I started to stand up a little bit more straight. I started to have a higher level of respect for myself. I started to just show up differently. I had a stylist. I was really mindful about my hair, my makeup, how I spoke, how many people I impacted. And you really see a complete shift in your identity. And again, that's where I am now. I remember writing in my journal just the other day, like, I'm in a season where I want to 10X my life. I want to 10X my net worth. I want to 10X how I show up with my style. I want to 10X my health. I want to 10X my relationships. Like, I just want the absolute best for myself. And also recognizing when it comes to growth, your best is going to change. My best at one point was making $10,000 a month. My best at another point was making $20,000 a month. My best at one point was making $40,000 a month. When you continue to elevate, you have to understand that your standards will elevate as well. So keep in mind, your standards should be growing. The things that you desired and that got you excited and that you were proud of in your 20s, you could still be proud of those things, but they should no longer impress you in your 30s or in your 40s, because as you're growing, so should your standards. So let's talk about what it looks like to go from season to season. The first thing is really identifying where you are. This is about being brutally honest about where you are, how you're feeling, how you're doing, how you are showing up. Now, I know one of the things that you'll see jokingly on social media or maybe in conversations with your friends is about being delusional, right? Being delulu. And I'm not anti being delusional, but I think that there are two perspectives of delusion. And I think there's a perspective of being delusional as a dreamer, and then there's a perspective of being delusional and in denial. It's incredibly important that you don't live in denial and that you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I like this and I don't like this. That you can look at your bank account and you could say, I like this or I don't like this. That you can look at your relationship and say, I like this and I don't like this. You have to look at where you are to then determine where you want to be, because it's incredibly important that you don't take the aspects of your money habits, your relationship habits, your health habits into your next season. One of the concepts that I love that Ben Hardy talked about, he talked about this in 10X is easier than 2X in one of his speeches, is that you need to start looking at your life from the vantage point of your future. And I thought this was so incredible that, yes, we need to be very clear and honest about where we are now, but based on where you want to go, what needs to change about your present? And so when you look at your bank account, you look at your health, you look at your relationships, you look at all of the aspects of your life, you have to say, is this what my future self would tolerate? Is this what my future self would be okay with? What areas do I need to leave behind so I can make sure it doesn't even touch my future self? So the first step is really just seeing exactly where you are now and understanding what you need to leave behind. The second step is really understanding where you are losing focus and having incredibly clear focus. And before I keep going, I'll say the actual first step is knowing where you want to end up. I remember Oprah saying, most people don't get to where they want to go because they don't know where they want to go. Boy, I said, Oprah, I'll fight you right now. Most people don't get to where they want to go because they don't know where they want to go. You have to have clear vision. What are you walking towards? What are you working towards? Where is it that you want to go? What is that person like? And what is she doing 5 years prior, 7 years prior, maybe even 2 years prior to be able to get there? So you want to make sure that you are being very clear on where you are and being honest about what's working and what's not working. And then you want to make sure that you are eliminating distractions and increasing your focus. In the book, Good to Great, by Jim Collins, he says that good is the enemy of great. Good is the enemy of great. And the concept is really saying that many times we think what's keeping us from our destination are roadblocks and hardships and challenges, but what's actually keeping us from our destination is all these other small, tiny, good goals instead of the great vision. And so what we should be focused on 10xing our net worth. We should be focused on taking more vacations. We should be focused on having better health. We should be focused on being at a healthier weight. We should be focused on lowering our blood pressure, whatever it is. We get so distracted by all of those tiny mini goals along the way, instead of just saying, I'm only focused on this one target, and these little BS milestones along the way are actually a distraction. And I'm getting caught up in doing these good things when I need to stay focused on great. So make sure when you're thinking about what you want to accomplish in life that you don't get distracted by shiny object syndrome. That when you say, I want to grow my Instagram, but then you hear somebody else saying TikTok is the new wave and you need to be focused on that you don't get distracted and you're like, well, let me build the TikTok too. That you're like, I said I want to grow my Instagram. I don't need to worry about TikTok because my focus is on my Instagram growth. And that's just a loose example, but that's a clear example about how it's so easy to get distracted by what seems like a good idea. The other thing that is incredibly important is to be very clear on your next steps and really thinking about your level of sacrifice based on the vision that you truly want for yourself. In episode 3, I talked about what I call my desire declarations. And it's really this premise that every desire must be matched with a discipline. Every desire must be matched with the discipline. And so if you want to lose weight, you need to also have the discipline of exercising. If you want to make more money, you must have the discipline to ask for more money by selling more. If you have the desire to attract a certain type of person, you must have the discipline to first become that person. So you really need to start thinking about, what disciplines do I need to implement? Yes, of course, we want to be more focused, but what are we focusing on? What are the minor action steps that we need to take? What do we need to say no to? And what are the 1 to 2 things that we need to say yes to? Another thing that they talk about inside of 10X is easier than 2X is the 80-20 principle, about how 80% of the things that we're doing, we don't really need to focus on. It's that 20% that if we just went all in on or put 80% of our time into, it would get us to our goals even faster. So you need to have the discipline to say no. You need to have the discipline to say, I'm not doing this anymore, or somebody else could be doing it, because you need to stay focused. And part of having focus is being disciplined enough to say, I got to let good go. I got to let good go for great. So if you're listening to this episode and you're like me, you're really ambitious, you want to live your best possible life, you want to leave this world empty, you want to get to the gates and hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. This is the time for you to think about, how can I elevate to my next season? What disciplines do I need to have? How can I stay focused? What do I need to say no to? I'm really encouraging you to 10X your life, 10X your business, 10X your relationships, 10X your finances. I want to know, what was your biggest takeaway from today's episode? Do me a favor. I want you to like this on YouTube and leave me a review. And I want you to also share, what are some things right now that you are doing that you need to leave behind? And what are 1 to 3 things that you need to start putting in place so you can elevate your life? I want to hold you accountable and I want to cheer you on. Until next time, keep working hard so you can live soft.